to our top story. Of course, business to the fore at the moment with Stephen Carroll. Greece's banks remaining closed then, Stephen, for another 2 days. I mean, does it look realistic, though, that they'll be able to open after that?
Not at this stage, it doesn't, no. We heard on Sunday that Greek banks had reserves of 500 million euros left. On average, people withdraw 300 million euros in a regular day. So the maths doesn't look great at this stage. And what we had on Monday was a decision from the European Central Bank on the emergency liquidity assistance that it provides to Greek banks. It's capped that at 89 billion euros. That's what's prompted the capital controls coming into place in the first place. But since then, we know that Greek banks have had to impose this daily withdrawal limit of 60 euros per day. And what they decided on Monday was not to increase that emergency lending further, and instead they tightened the screw slightly on the Greek banks, because not only did they not increase the supply of capital they're getting, they also chose to tighten up the rules around what sort of collateral these banks need to give in exchange for those loans. Now, we didn't get exact details of what they require from the banks. We're told the Greek banks are able to meet that for the moment. But the fact is, with no new cash flowing into the system, we're looking at a situation where the major Greek banks will run out of money very soon. That's why they've been closed for an extra 2 days. And without the ECB deciding on Wednesday, which is the next time they'll look at this emergency liquidity programme, without them increasing that cap then, it doesn't look like the banks will be able to reopen after that either. OK, well, that's the banks. Well, meanwhile, Stephen, some normality returning to the markets. I mean, they haven't really panicked over this yet, have they? No, I mean, we've seen ups and downs, but nothing too dramatic in the past couple of days. Let's look at where the figures are today, starting first of all with the currency markets. The euro trading down slightly against the dollar, but again, staying within that range that we've seen over the past few days. It's still over $1.10, down slightly on the day, but we're not seeing any dramatic reaction on the currency markets anyway, and we haven't since this latest twist in the Greek crisis over the past 10 days has happened. On the stock markets, we're seeing some of the markets gaining back some of the losses that we saw yesterday. We'd seen the Hang Seng in Hong Kong and the Nikkei in Tokyo both fall pretty dramatically in trading yesterday. They're back up, the Nikkei at least back up today, the Hang Seng seeing small falls, similar small falls in Kospi. But really the Asian market's getting back to kind of local matters and things that are more important at home than on the international front. And we haven't really seen big changes either. Even on the European markets, we saw moves, but during the day, you know, they opened down pretty sharply, but during the day, those losses were pared out as well. And a lot of that's down to the fact the situation now is very different from what it was in 2010. The fear of contagion, that a problem in one part of the Eurozone could set off a whole chain reaction across the rest of the Eurozone, has changed because we have things like the Eurozone's new bailout fund in place. That's 500 billion euros ready to be deployed if another country finds itself in difficulty. There's a banking union now, which means the banks are more closely supervised. If there's a problem with a bank, there is a system in place to wind that bank up without allowing it to bring down a country in the same way that we saw in Portugal and in Spain and in Ireland. So the situation structurally is very different. We also have this policy from the European Central Bank, the whatever it takes policy to protect the euro. There is a sense, at least from investors, that there is more out there that can be done that'll stop the spillover into other markets. Of course, none of that helps Greece for the moment, though.
And looking at those Asian markets we saw there, the Chinese markets, what on earth is going on there?
We've had this, we have to keep saying this over the past couple of days. Every time we've seen a trend across the Asian markets to disregard what's happening in China. Now, almost a third has been wiped off the value of the Chinese markets in the past 3 weeks. That's after it doubled in value in the previous year. Now, part of that is down to the nature of who actually invests in Chinese shares. Around 85% of investors in the equity markets in China are small retail investors, people buying shares here and there in companies, which contributes to some of the volatility. Elsewhere in the world, it's mostly professional money managers that invest in stock markets. Now, the government has stepped in with interest rate cuts and other measures to try and stabilise the market. But for now, the rout is continuing. Shanghai, as we saw a moment ago, down again sharply today. And this is becoming a sort of guessing game with policymakers as to what they're going to do next. We've got the markets reacting before they're expecting more steps and in advance of future steps being taken by the government. Now, in an effort to escape the chaos on the market, around a quarter of the 2,800 firms listed on the Shanghai and Shenzhen exchanges have suspended their shares, many without giving a reason why, just simply trying to avoid the difficulty that they're facing there. We'll take a look now at some of today's other business stories, and we'll turn to Samsung, which has warned that its earnings will be lower than expected in the second quarter of this year. That's after disappointing sales of its latest smartphone. The South Korean electronics company expects profits to be down 4% on last year at around $6 billion. PayPal has been given its first official market value as a standalone company of $44 billion. It comes ahead of its separation from eBay on July 20th. Its shares started trading in limited terms on Tuesday on the Nasdaq and settled at just over $36 per share. And the French oil services company Technip is to cut 6,000 jobs globally over the fall in the price of oil. The company's trying to save €830 million as a result of smaller profit margins. Technip says its clients have been substantially hurt by the oil price slump, and many of them are deferring new projects.
And finally, Stephen has pulled out for us some rather unfortunate symbolism. Now, this is at the European Central Bank in Frankfurt, isn't it?
Yes, now the European Central Bank, when we look at it normally, we're used to seeing this giant symbol of the euro outside it. And in possibly the worst timing imaginable, they actually started taking down that sculpture ridiculous. Of the euro outside the European Central Bank headquarters yesterday.
That's big, isn't it? Didn't realise it was that large.
Now, the problem is that it's been vandalised in parts. There are parts of it that aren't working anymore. It's meant to light up and some of the lights don't work. So the work has actually been set for quite a long time to take it down, refurbish it and put it back up. The structure's been there since 2001 in the lead up to the introduction, of course, euro notes and coins in 2002. Yeah. Light bulbs need to be replaced. It needs to be fixed. There are bumper stickers on it from the various protests that take part outside the European Central Bank. But you couldn't really have picked a worse time when people are talking about the dismantling of the euro. Yeah. They are physically dismantling a euro outside of the European Central Bank.
Perhaps I put a statue of Yanis Varoufakis up instead, or a lit up version.
Just something a bit different.
Make a change, wouldn't it? Stephen, thanks a lot. Stephen Carroll with Business here on France 24, of course.